The Academy grounds glittered under the artificial sky dome, a perfect simulation of a calm blue morning. From orbit, the sprawling complex was nothing more than a speck against the silver-green planet, but inside its training fields, cadets from 100 worlds marched, sparred, and drilled in unison. The Interstellar Alliance Academy, hallowed ground where the most gifted of every species came to be forged into soldiers. On Training Field 7, a live combat simulation was underway. Drones whirred overhead, shifting from stealth to attack in carefully coded maneuvers. Cadets in shimmering exo-armor moved across the grid, their orders clear: disable, outmaneuver, survive. Among them was Varen Kaur, a young cadet of the Ketheri species, his long limbs and silvery scales glinting in the light. His kind prided themselves on reflexes sharp enough to dodge plasma fire. But on this day, his skill would mean little. Without warning, one of the drones shuddered mid-air. Its sensors flickered, targeting systems glitching. Instead of firing a harmless stun pulse, its emitter overloaded. A searing bolt of plasma shot out, cutting through the simulation zone like lightning. The beam struck Varen square in the chest. A scream tore from his throat as his body crumpled, armor sizzling, smoke rising. The safety barriers didn't trigger. His life support failed to engage. For a split second, the entire field froze, cadets, drones, instructors watching from the observation deck. Then panic erupted. "Medic team, now," barked Commander Seren, his voice echoing through the amplifiers. Alien medics sprinted across the grid, their multi-limbed forms carrying glowing scanners and trauma kits that could knit flesh at the cellular level. They dropped to their knees beside Varen, their devices flashing over his wound. The readings spiked red. Vital collapse, systemic shock, one medic hissed, his translucent eyelids fluttering as he pressed the scanner deeper. No response to stabilizer pulses. "We're losing him." The others adjusted frequencies, layered nanite patches, tried to force his failing heart to restart. Nothing worked. The smell of scorched scales hung in the air. Around them, the cadets stood frozen, eyes wide, some trembling. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Academy's safeguards were infallible. No one actually died here. But Varen was dying. His body convulsed, blood seeping from beneath cracked armor. His pulse faded with every second. The medics' voices grew frantic, overlapping in half a dozen languages. Their hands moved faster, but the beeping of their monitors slowed, deepened. And then, a voice cut through the chaos. Calm. Low. Human. Step back. Heads turned. A lone figure pushed through the ring of cadets. A young man, dark-haired, broad-shouldered, with no insignia of rank. Just another cadet, or so he seemed. But his expression carried none of the terror etched into the others' faces. His eyes were steady, his jaw set. It was the human, Jace Arden. "Out of the way," he said again, kneeling beside the convulsing Ketheri. One of the medics snapped at him. "You have no clearance, this is advanced trauma response. Move aside before you make it worse." Jace didn't flinch. "You already lost him. If you want him to live, hold him still." The alien medics blinked, their mandibles clicking in disbelief. The cadets whispered. No one touched a patient with bare hands, not when their technology could rebuild nerves and vessels without cutting. But the human was reaching forward as though he meant to, press directly on the wound. Primitive. Insane. Varen gasped weakly, his slitted eyes rolling back. Blood bubbled from his mouth. "Don't you dare," another medic began. But Jace's hands were already there. He tore aside the fractured chest plate and pressed his palms hard against the searing wound, crimson-black blood spilling over his fingers. The aliens recoiled in horror. Some turned their faces away, others cried out as though he had just committed desecration. "Pressure, he needs pressure," Jace muttered, almost to himself, tightening his grip. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "I've seen worse. Hold him steady, or he'll bleed out right here." The medics froze. Their scanners screeched warnings they couldn't interpret. Their hands hovered helplessly over their kits. The cadets looked on, whispering in shock, as the human skin stained with alien blood. What was he doing? Why wasn't he afraid? Jace leaned lower, his breath steady despite the coppery stench rising around him. He pressed harder, feeling the pulse flutter beneath his fingers. Somewhere deep inside the wound, Varen's heart still fought to beat. Jace wasn't about to let it stop. The alien gasps rose higher. Some muttered about contamination. Others about madness. One cadet whispered, "He'll kill him faster." But still, Jace pressed down, unshaken. From the observation deck above, Commander Seren watched, his expression unreadable. Around him, the instructors debated whether to intervene, to drag the human cadet away before he made things worse. But none moved. Something in the human's posture, his unwavering calm in the face of death, held them all transfixed. Blood continued to pool around Jace's hands, hot and slick. He shifted his grip, angled his weight, refusing to let the flow escape. His jaw clenched. "Not today," he whispered. Varen's chest hitched. A strangled breath rattled from his lungs. And then, just as the tension reached its breaking point, the camera of the training drone, still recording the exercise, zoomed in close. Closer. The frame captured Jace's blood-smeared hands pressing into alien flesh. The medics' horrified faces looming above. The wide, unblinking eyes of cadets circling in fear. Closer still. Until all that filled the frame was the human's hands and the desperate wound beneath them. And then, cut to black. The silence left behind was deafening. The silence after the blackout was unbearable. In the Academy's control deck, the instructors replayed the feed, frame by frame, as though slowing the images might help them make sense of what they had just witnessed. Alien cadets murmured to each other in hushed voices, their disbelief spreading like ripples through a pond. Down on Training Field 7, the world had not paused. The air was thick with the metallic tang of blood and scorched armor. Varen Kaur lay beneath Jace's hands, his breath shallow, his chest spasming as though caught between life and death. "Stop him before it's too late," one medic cried, his multi-jointed limbs twitching in agitation. "His methods are archaic, barbaric. This is not how we save lives." But another medic hesitated, her frilled head tilting as she scanned the vitals once more. The readings were erratic but stabilizing. Her throat pulsed nervously. "Look. His arterial pressure, it's rising." The first medic snapped his gaze to the monitor. His mandibles clacked in disbelief. "That's impossible. He should already be gone." Jace didn't look up. He didn't argue. His entire focus was on the rhythm beneath his palms. Each faint throb of Varen's pulse was a fragile thread he refused to let snap. His arms strained, his body rigid with controlled pressure. Sweat slicked his forehead, but his voice was steady. "Stay with me," he murmured. "I know this trick works. Just don't give up." The cadets around him exchanged looks. To them, the scene was alien in every sense. Their species relied on light years of science, devices that could regenerate organs, nanite swarms that could knit wounds. To watch a human ignore all that and instead press raw hands against another's failing body, it was madness. It was primitive. And yet, it was working. Varen's convulsions slowed. His breathing evened, ragged but less frantic. His heartbeat, faint as it was, found a rhythm again. Gasps broke out among the crowd. One cadet whispered, "He's pulling him back." The female medic leaned closer, her scanner confirming what her eyes already saw. "The hemorrhage has slowed. Circulation is, by the stars, stabilizing." Jace exhaled sharply, but he did not let go. He knew better than to celebrate too soon. "He's not out of danger," he said, glancing up at the medics for the first time. "I can hold the bleed, but you'll need to seal him now. If your tech can't force the vessels to close, then cauterize them manually. Do it while I keep pressure." The medics hesitated. No protocol had ever allowed for this kind of collaboration. But the human's voice carried no doubt, only authority. For reasons they couldn't explain, they obeyed. One activated a plasma filament, its blue edge humming. Another steadied the cauterizer near the wound while Jace kept his hands locked in place. "On my mark," Jace said. 3, 2, now. He shifted just enough to expose the torn artery, and the alien medic seared it shut in a flash of light. Varen's body jerked, then stilled. Jace reapplied pressure immediately, guiding them through the process as though he had done it countless times. Step by step, the bleeding slowed. The vitals steadied further. The beeping of the scanner returned to a rhythm that sounded almost normal. Then came the sound none of them expected, a groan. Weak, but unmistakably alive. Varen Kaur opened his eyes. The field erupted in stunned murmurs. Some cadets nearly collapsed from shock. Others backed away as though witnessing sorcery. Commander Seren's voice boomed from above. "Secure the cadet for medical transfer." Medics moved in quickly, lifting Varen onto a levitating stretcher. His skin was pale, but his pulse was strong enough to register. His eyes flickered toward Jace for a brief second before he lost consciousness again. The human finally leaned back, his hands trembling from effort. His palms were slick with alien blood, staining him up to the wrists. He looked at them for a moment, then wiped them against his training suit without hesitation. Silence fell over the cadets. A ring of wide eyes locked on him, horror and awe mingled in equal measure. No one spoke. No one dared. Finally, a young cadet from the reptilian Thalkar species whispered what everyone else was thinking. "What was that?" Jace's eyes swept the circle. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. "It's called first aid," he said. "Pressure. Stop the bleeding long enough for someone smarter than you to fix it. Where I come from, it's basic training." The words rippled outward, stirring both confusion and disbelief. Basic training? To them, this was something out of myth. Commander Seren strode down from the observation deck, his boots striking the ground like thunder. The cadet stiffened as he approached Jace, his piercing gaze unblinking. "You defied protocol. You interfered with medics. You risked the life of a cadet under my command." He stopped a breath away, his shadow falling over the human. The silence stretched, heavy as stone. Then, "And yet, you saved him." A wave of whispers swept through the crowd. Seren studied Jace as though seeing him for the first time. His lips curled, not quite into a smile, but something that held equal parts respect and unease. "Tell me, human, how many times have you done this before?" Jace's expression didn't change. His voice was calm. "Enough." The commander's eyes narrowed, as though he had just realized that the Academy's human cadet carried secrets no scanner could read. The moment hung between them like a blade on the verge of falling. And all around, the galaxy's finest warriors could only wonder, what else did this human know that they did not? Night fell across the Academy grounds. The artificial dome dimmed to a star-filled sky, its projection carefully tuned to mimic the view from a barren world at the edge of the galaxy. Training had been suspended for the day, though no one left the fields without talking about what had happened. The whispers spread like fire in dry grass. The human touched him, pressed his bare hands into the wound. They said Varen's vitals recovered. It shouldn't have been possible. He ordered the medics what to do, and they listened. To most cadets, Jace Arden was no longer just a curiosity among the Academy's diverse recruits. He was now something else, something unsettling. A creature who carried knowledge and methods beyond their understanding, yet rooted in something strangely primitive. Inside the barracks, the atmosphere was heavier than usual. Groups of cadets sat in clusters, exchanging hushed speculation. The Ketheri, still shaken by seeing one of their own so close to death, kept to themselves. The reptilian Thalkar muttered about humans having blood magic. The insectoid Myrians clicked nervously, insisting that contamination was inevitable. But through all the noise, one truth could not be ignored. Jace had saved a life where advanced technology had failed. He, however, sat apart. On his bunk, staring at his hands, scrubbed clean now, but faint stains of alien blood still clung under his nails. He flexed his fingers slowly, remembering the resistance of torn flesh, the sluggish beat beneath his palms. It wasn't the first time he had felt that. A faint hiss sounded at his door. Someone was outside. "Enter," Jace said, his tone flat. The door slid open, and a figure stepped inside. Tall, scaled, with piercing silver eyes, Commander Seren. His very presence made the air tighten. "Cadet Arden," the commander said. His voice was low, measured. "You've caused quite a storm." Jace didn't rise. "Would you prefer I'd let him die?" Seren's lips curved, not into a smile, but something colder. Don't mistake me. You acted against regulation, but you achieved the impossible. I've led soldiers across 4 sectors. I've seen medics trained by the best nanotechnicians in the galaxy. And not one of them would have thought to do what you did. He stepped closer, studying Jace with an intensity that bordered on predatory. So tell me, human, where did you learn such methods? Jace's jaw tightened. His gaze dropped briefly before lifting again, calm but firm. Where I come from, technology isn't always there to save you. Sometimes you have seconds, not machines. You do what you can with what you have. That is not an answer. It's the only one you'll get. The silence stretched. Seren's eyes narrowed, reading more than Jace wanted revealed. Finally, the commander turned toward the door, his tone clipped. Very well. But understand this, Arden, the Academy thrives on knowledge. Secrets do not survive here. When he left, the tension lingered like smoke. Jace leaned back on his bunk, exhaling slowly. His mind slipped unbidden to memories he had buried deep. Earth. Not the glittering cities that aliens admired when they first established contact, but the ruins left after border wars and civil skirmishes. Fields where medics never arrived in time. Villages where bleeding had to be stopped with hands, belts, anything available. He had been young, far too young, when he first saw someone die from waiting on technology that never came. His father's voice still echoed in his head. Pressure, Jace. Always pressure. Don't think, just act. That lesson had saved lives back then. And today, it had saved another. But here, among cadets who had never imagined life without scanners and nanits, it set him apart in ways that could be dangerous. The next morning, the academy buzzed louder than ever. Rumors solidified into stories. Some painted Jace as a savior, others as a reckless risk. Cadets avoided his gaze, or stared too long. The medics filed an official complaint, citing contamination risk and violation of medical protocol. Yet, when Varen Kaur was wheeled out of the recovery wing alive, conscious, and asking for the human who had saved him, the whispers took on a different tone. The Ketheri cadet's voice was weak but clear. The human, he saved me. Those words traveled faster than plasma fire. And with them came questions the academy couldn't ignore. That evening, Jace was summoned. Not by Commander Seren this time, but by the High Council of Instructors. The message was curt: report to Chamber 12 at once. Chamber 12 was no ordinary meeting hall. It was a chamber reserved for inquiries that could alter the academy itself. A place where reputations were broken or forged into legend. As Jace walked the long corridor toward it, cadets peeked from their quarters, their eyes following him with a mix of fear and fascination. He carried himself the same as always, steady, calm, but inside, a storm brewed. He knew this wasn't about discipline. It was about something larger. The academy wanted answers. And if he gave the wrong ones, the entire galaxy might learn truths Earth had kept hidden. The doors to Chamber 12 hissed open. A dozen instructors of every species sat in a semicircle, their eyes fixed on him. Behind them glowed holoscreens replaying the footage, the drone's strike, the medic's panic, his hands pressing into the wound, the gasp of the crowd. At the center, a senior instructor spoke, her voice sharp as a blade. Cadet Arden. You performed an act unprecedented in academy history. We demand to know what else does humanity conceal. The chamber fell silent, waiting. Jace stood tall. He did not blink. And though the galaxy's finest watched him with suspicion and awe, his expression remained calm. Almost too calm. More than you think, he said. The chamber's silence tightened like a noose. Jace's words, more than you think, hung in the air, resonating off the vaulted walls until they seemed to echo in every corner of the room. The instructors exchanged uneasy glances. Some leaned forward, intrigued. Others recoiled, as though the human cadet had just confirmed their deepest suspicions. The senior instructor, a tall Aviren with translucent wings folded against her back, narrowed her eyes. You speak as though Earth carries secrets deliberately hidden from the Alliance. Secrets you alone claim to know. Explain yourself. Jace stood unflinching in the center of the chamber. His stance was calm, but his muscles were taut beneath the academy uniform. He knew one wrong word here could brand him a liar, or worse, a threat. "I don't speak for Earth," he said evenly. "But I've lived what you refuse to imagine. On my world, not everyone has access to nanits and trauma beds. Sometimes, survival depends on your hands and your will. That's all." A heavy-browed Thalkar instructor hissed, his scaled tail thumping the floor. "Nonsense. No advanced species would allow its people to live without technology. That is barbaric neglect." Jace's jaw tightened. "You call it barbaric. We call it reality. Machines fail. Power grids collapse. Wars tear down everything you thought was safe. In those moments, you either learn to adapt, or you bury the people you love." The words cut through the chamber like shards of glass. For a moment, no one spoke. The insectoid instructor, delicate antennae quivering, leaned forward. "And how many did you bury?" Jace's expression flickered, just for an instant. Memories surged, faces gone pale, bodies stilled, the weight of helplessness pressing down on him as a boy. He forced the images back into their cage. His voice, when it came, was flat. Enough to know that hesitation kills. The Aviren instructor's wings twitched. "Your demonstration saved a life, yes. But it undermined the Academy's systems. Do you realize how dangerous it is to suggest that primitive methods surpass our technology?" Jace's eyes hardened. "I didn't suggest anything. Your medics had the most advanced tools in the galaxy, and Varen was still dying under them. I did what had to be done. That's the only truth here." The chamber stirred, whispers rising among the instructors. Some looked shaken, others looked furious. Commander Seren, who stood silently at the periphery, finally stepped forward. His presence shifted the air like a storm approaching. "Enough," he said. His voice was gravel, heavy with authority. "We can debate the philosophy of survival another time. What matters is this: the human acted without orders. He risked contamination. And yet, he achieved what none of you could. That fact cannot be dismissed." The instructors fell quiet. Seren's gaze locked on Jace. "So the question is not whether his method worked. The question is, what else does he know? And where did he learn it?" A hush settled, thicker than before. Jace exhaled slowly. He had known this moment would come. He could tell the truth about Earth's fractured history, about the wars that forced humanity to survive in ways no alien race could comprehend. But to reveal that would expose wounds his people had long kept hidden from the galaxy's judgment. Or he could lie. But lies rarely survived the Academy. His silence stretched too long. The Aviren instructor snapped, her wings fluttering sharply. "Answer, Cadet." Jace finally spoke, his tone calm, deliberate. "Earth has seen wars that stripped away comfort, stripped away technology, stripped away everything except the will to survive. I learned from soldiers who didn't wait for machines to save them. I learned from medics who worked with nothing but their hands. I learned because if I didn't, I wouldn't be standing here now." The words rang out, raw and unpolished. For the first time, the instructors glimpsed something beneath the human's calm exterior, a hardness forged not in simulations, but in fire and blood. One instructor, a pale-skinned Eridan, leaned back slowly. "If this is true, then humanity is far more dangerous than we believed. To endure such conditions and still endure." Another, an Aviren, whispered, "Perhaps that is why the Alliance hesitated to integrate them fully." The insectoid instructor's mandibles clicked. Dangerous knowledge spreads. Already the cadets whisper of him. If they begin to idolize these methods, our reliance on technology could fracture. The chamber threatened to dissolve into argument, but Commander Seren cut across them like a blade. "Enough speculation. Here is the truth. This cadet saved a Ketheri life. He exposed weakness in our systems, yes, but he also revealed strength we cannot dismiss. Whether we like it or not, humanity has something to teach us." The declaration silenced the chamber. Some instructors bristled, but none dared counter Seren directly. Finally, the senior instructor spoke again. Her voice was measured, heavy with calculation. "Very well. The Council will not expel Cadet Arden, for now. But know this, human, from this day forward, every step you take will be watched. Every action will be weighed. If you falter, if you attempt to spread your primitive doctrine, the consequences will be severe. Her wings flared, finalizing the judgment. Dismissed. The doors hissed open behind him. Jace inclined his head slightly, concealing the storm churning in his chest, and turned to leave. As he walked the long corridor back into the academy's heart, cadets stepped aside to let him pass. Some watched him with fear. Others with awe. But none looked at him the way they had before. For the first time, they didn't see just a human cadet. They saw something far more unsettling. A survivor. And in the quiet corners of the academy, whispers grew louder still. What else does the human know? The academy had always been a crucible of unity. Cadets from across the galaxy trained, ate, and lived together, different species, one purpose. But since the accident, a fracture line had split the halls. Every corridor buzzed with it. Every mess hall table hummed with whispered arguments. The human method had become more than a rumor, it was a dividing line. Some cadets regarded Jace Arden with awe. They replayed the footage on their personal holos late into the night, studying his calm, his steady hands, the impossible survival of Varen Core. To them, Jace wasn't just a fellow cadet, he was proof that survival wasn't the exclusive gift of technology. He embodied resilience, something they had never been taught to value. Others, however, eyed him with open suspicion. To them, the incident wasn't a miracle, it was contamination, a dangerous infection of barbaric superstition. They whispered that humans had blood magic, that their primitive ways threatened the academy's very foundations. The divide was sharpest in the training fields. During drills, some cadets gravitated toward Jace, eager to stand at his side, mimicking his discipline. Others avoided him altogether, muttering that his presence was a danger to protocol. A handful openly challenged him, their voices sharp with disdain. Hands on flesh like an animal, hissed a Mirian cadet one morning. You think that's knowledge? That's desperation masquerading as skill. Jace ignored him, as he ignored most of them. But every word carved the divide deeper. Varen Core's survival only amplified the tension. Though weak, the Ketheri cadet insisted on speaking. He praised Jace openly, calling him the reason I breathe. His words spread quickly, feeding the legend. For every cadet who dismissed Jace, 2 more were drawn into his orbit. The instructors noticed. In Chamber 12, the council convened again, not with Jace this time, but among themselves. The Avaren senior instructor folded her wings tightly. He is destabilizing the cadet corps. Discipline erodes when whispers replace doctrine. The Thalkar slammed his tail against the floor. Then expel him before it spreads further. But Commander Seren stood firm. Expel him, and we risk martyrdom. Keep him, and we may yet learn what humanity has kept hidden. The chamber seethed with disagreement. Outside, in the mess halls and barracks, the cadets debated in their own way. For some, Jace was already a leader. For others, a threat. The tension simmered like plasma beneath a thin shell, waiting for a crack. It came sooner than anyone expected. During a simulation the following week, squads were tasked with navigating a hostile terrain scenario. The environment was brutal, shifting sands, corrosive winds, drones programmed to strike without mercy. Teams scattered across the grid, relying on scanners to detect hazards. Jace's squad pushed forward cautiously. Among them were cadets who trusted him, Varen, now recovered enough to rejoin, though weaker than before, and a handful of others curious about his methods. Halfway through, disaster struck. A sudden sandstorm scrambled the scanners, rendering them useless. Drones descended, their plasma fire cutting through the chaos. Panic rippled through the squad as their technology failed them. Scanners offline, one cadet cried. We're blind out here, shouted another. But Jace's voice cut through, calm and certain. Then stop relying on them. Use your eyes. Your ears. Stay low, keep moving. Trust yourselves, not the machines. Some hesitated, but Varen obeyed instantly. He crouched low, following Jace's hand signals. Another cadet followed. And slowly, a pocket of order formed in the storm. Meanwhile, in another squad not far away, distrust bloomed. A Mirian cadet spotted Jace leading his team without scanners and sneered. Foolish human tricks. He'll get them killed. But as the storm cleared and the exercise ended, the results were undeniable. Jace's squad survived intact, battered but standing. Other teams, who had clung to their failing scanners, were scattered and eliminated by drones. When the exercise debrief was displayed on the Academy holos, the divide deepened into open conflict. "You see," Varen declared in the mess hall, his voice carrying over the chatter. "Machines failed us. Jace didn't. He led us through. He saved us again." Cadets cheered, voices rising. But across the hall, others hissed, shouting back. "He defies regulation. He undermines everything we've been taught. Primitive tricks won't win real wars." The mess hall roared with competing voices until fists slammed tables and claws scraped against metal. And in the corner, watching the storm he had unintentionally unleashed, Jace sat silent. His face gave nothing away, but inside, he felt the weight pressing heavier than ever. He hadn't come here to lead a faction. He hadn't come to start a war of ideas. He had come to survive, to learn, to carry Earth's fragile honor into the stars. But the Academy was no longer just a place of training. It was becoming a battleground of ideology. And whether he wanted it or not, Jace Arden was at the center. High above, in his private office, Commander Seren watched the mess hall feed. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes narrowed. "This human," he murmured, half to himself. "He may fracture the Academy, or forge it into something new." For the first time in years, the commander allowed himself a thin smile. But either way, the galaxy will remember his name. News traveled faster than ships. The incident on Training Field 7, the survival of Varen Corps, and the growing divide among cadets had leapt beyond the Academy walls. First it spread through the cadets' personal messages to families, then leaked into open comm channels, and finally found its way into alliance networks. What began as rumor soon became headline. Human cadet defies protocol, saves life where tech failed. Academy divided over primitive survival methods. Are humans hiding knowledge from the Alliance? Across the galaxy, debates ignited. On worlds where technology reigned supreme, voices scoffed at the idea that bare hands could succeed where nanits faltered. On poorer fringe colonies, however, the story struck like lightning. Entire populations, long neglected by the Alliance's promise of universal aid, seized upon the human cadet's defiance as vindication. "If he can save lives without their machines," one broadcast host declared from a mining colony, "then why have we been forced to suffer and die when our tech fails? What else is the Alliance keeping from us?" The political ripple became a wave. Senators in the Alliance Council demanded answers. High Command was pressed to issue statements. The Academy, meant to be a neutral ground of unity, had become the epicenter of a storm threatening to divide the very galaxy it served. Inside the Academy itself, tension reached a breaking point. 2 nights after the simulation exercise, a brawl erupted in the barracks. Cadets loyal to Jace clashed with those who despised his influence. Words turned to shoves, shoves to blows. Alien claws raked across armor, fists struck with bone-cracking force. The fight raged until instructors stormed in, restraining half a dozen species at once. By morning, the Academy was on lockdown. Training suspended, common areas monitored by drones. Cadets whispered of expulsions, of punishments severe enough to end careers before they began. But beneath the fear, the factions only hardened. Jace felt the weight of it every time he walked a corridor. Some cadets nodded to him with respect. Others turned away in disgust. And some, more dangerous than either, followed him with eyes that burned, as though measuring the distance between admiration and hatred. He said nothing. He hadn't asked for this. But silence was no longer enough. The council summoned him again. This time, it wasn't in Chamber 12. It was a direct link to the Alliance Council itself. Holoscreens flared to life around him, casting the faces of senators, admirals, and representatives from a dozen worlds. Their voices overlapped, sharp and demanding. "Cadet Arden, You stand at the center of a controversy that has reached every corner of our territory. Did you withhold knowledge deliberately from the Alliance? Are there other primitive methods humanity has concealed? Jace stood alone in the projection chamber, the lights hot against his skin. He felt like prey under the scrutiny of predators. I withheld nothing, he said, his voice firm. I acted because someone was dying. Where I come from, that's enough reason. An Eridan senator leaned forward, his pale features pinched. But your methods undermine centuries of medical doctrine. Already, colonies clamor for human training. You destabilize order, cadet. Jace's eyes flicked across the gallery of faces. If saving lives destabilizes your order, maybe your order is the problem. The chamber erupted in noise. Some shouted in outrage, others muttered approval. The presiding counselor banged a gavel, demanding silence. Commander Seren's voice cut across the storm. He had been permitted to speak as the Academy's representative. With respect, counselors, what you see is not rebellion, it is resilience. The human revealed a weakness in our over-reliance on technology. Instead of condemning him, we should be studying him. A murmur of agreement spread, but it was quickly drowned by dissent. The council was fractured, as divided as the Academy itself. When the session ended, Jace left the chamber in silence, the weight of a galaxy's gaze pressing on his shoulders. He had not just become a symbol within the Academy. He was now a lightning rod for the Alliance. That night, in the barracks, Varen approached him quietly. The Ketheri cadet's chest still bore scars from the accident, but his eyes burned with conviction. They fear you, Varen said. But others see hope. Out there, on the fringe worlds, your name is already spreading. They call you the survivor. They say you've shown the galaxy it doesn't have to bow to broken machines. Jace shook his head. I didn't ask for any of this. Doesn't matter what you asked for, Varen replied. The galaxy's already chosen. Before Jace could answer, the Academy's alarm klaxons erupted. Red lights strobed across the barracks, sirens echoing through the dome. Emergency alert, the intercom boomed. Unidentified vessels breaching orbit. All cadets to defense stations immediately. The cadets froze, then scrambled into motion. This was no simulation. The voice carried a sharpness no training drill ever had. Jace rose, his jaw tight, his calm unbroken. But inside, he knew the truth. The storm outside the Academy had arrived sooner than anyone expected. And the galaxy was about to test whether survival was truly in its machines, or in its people. The sky above the Academy blazed red as the orbital dome shuddered under enemy fire. Alarms screamed through every corridor, drowning out thought. Cadets sprinted to defense stations, some panicked, others grimly determined. This was no exercise, the enemy had come. The vessels were unidentified, but their intent was clear. They swept in tight formation, weapons scorching the dome's shields. Whoever they were, they had chosen their moment well. The Academy, divided and unstable, was vulnerable. In the command center, Commander Seren barked orders as instructors scrambled. Shields at 70%. Deploy defense batteries. All cadet squads to ground intercept. The Academy had trained for this, simulated invasion drills were routine, but this time the cadets' faith in one another was already fractured. Factions clashed even as they armed themselves. Follow protocol, shouted a Myrian squad leader. We stick to scanners and wait for command. No. Varen countered, his voice sharp. Protocol will get us killed. Follow Jace, he knows how to survive when the machines fail. The words cut through the chaos like lightning. Cadets turned, their eyes swinging toward Jace. He stood calm amid the storm, adjusting the strap of his armor, his rifle slung across his back. I didn't ask for this, Jace said quietly. But when the klaxons wailed again, his eyes hardened. But if you want to live, follow me. Half the cadets moved instantly, drawn to his certainty. The others held back, clinging to the safety of orders and protocol. The Academy had fractured into two armies in the blink of an eye. The ground shuddered as enemy troops breached the perimeter. Sleek machines poured through the Academy gates, their plasma rifles sweeping arcs of fire. Cadets scattered for cover, returning fire with wild bursts. Jace's group moved differently. He shouted over the din, giving sharp, simple commands. Low cover. Keep moving. Don't bunch up, they'll cut us down if you cluster. Without scanners, they relied on senses. Jace pointed to shifting dust clouds, there. Flank incoming. And his squad moved before the machines appeared. While the others fired blindly, wasting energy, Jace's squad ambushed, struck fast, and melted into shadows. Every move carried the rhythm of hard-learned survival, not textbook drills. Varen fought at his side, his movements slower from his injuries but fueled by fierce conviction. He glanced at Jace between volleys. This is what you meant, isn't it? Trusting ourselves. Jace only grunted, firing a clean shot that dropped an advancing drone. Elsewhere, cadets who stuck rigidly to scanners were routed. Their systems jammed, feeds scrambled. Without orders, they froze. Some were cut down, others retreated in disarray. The divide had never been clearer. From the observation deck, Commander Seren watched, his expression unreadable. Instructors around him panicked at the chaos, shouting conflicting commands. But Seren only narrowed his eyes. He saw what was happening. Cadets who trusted Jace survived, those who didn't faltered. By the stars, an instructor muttered, his, leading them. Seren's lips curved into something like grim satisfaction. No, he said softly. His teaching them. The battle raged for hours, but slowly the tide turned. Jace's squad grew larger as desperate cadets abandoned failing scanners and fell in behind him. His methods, hand signals, instinct, brutal efficiency spread through the ranks like wildfire. By the final wave, nearly the entire cadet corps fought under his system, not the Academy's doctrine. When the enemy finally retreated, leaving burning husks of drones in their wake, the Academy stood battered but unbroken. Silence fell over the smoking fields. Cadets slumped against walls, armor scorched, bodies trembling with exhaustion. But their eyes were fixed on one figure. Jace Arden, standing in the center, calm as ever. Blood smeared his uniform, his hands raw from gripping too hard, but his gaze was steady. Varen raised his voice, hoarse but clear. We lived because of him. The humans showed us how to survive when everything else failed. A roar of agreement erupted. Cadets cheered, some raising their rifles in salute. Even those who had once scorned him now looked on with grudging respect or open awe. From the deck above, the council of instructors gathered, their faces pale. They had witnessed more than a battle. They had seen doctrine crumble, replaced by something raw and undeniable. Commander Seren stepped forward, his voice booming. Cadets, today you have faced death not in simulation, but in truth. And you stand because one among you remembered what the rest of us forgot. Survival begins not with machines, but with will. His gaze locked on Jace. Remember this day. Remember who taught you to endure. The galaxy will remember too. The cheers rose louder, echoing across the battered Academy grounds. But in the quiet that followed, Jace's expression darkened. He saw what they could not. The enemy's retreat was not defeat, but warning. Someone out there wanted the Academy broken, wanted the alliance fractured. And now, with his name carried on every whisper and every broadcast, Jace knew the truth he had feared from the start. He was no longer just a cadet. He was a symbol. And symbols could unite empires, or destroy them.